All right, we're live. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. We are doing something a little bit new. We are actually streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, probably a few more places. So, yeah, if you're interested in joining in as we record these, we are going to try and put them up live, and then we'll edit them and put them on the podcast feed and things like that. But anyway, if you want to be part of the conversation, you can also comment in any of those places and it'll pop up and we'll respond to those. This week on our panel, we have Steve Edwards.
To do my best, AJ, yo, coming at you live from my room with my space heater in Oregon.
I'm Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and I am doing a bit of work on the website so that you can get at some of the courses we're putting together. So go check that out. And then we also have a special guest, and that is Lars-Erik Roald, I think is what I'm seeing here.
Yes, that's correct. I'm from calling from Norway, in Trondheim.
Oh, cool.
And, it's the last name is just like the writer, the Roald Dahl, you know?
Yep. It's funny because my wife's actually watching Matilda the musical in the other room.
Okay.
So Matilda is one of the books that he wrote.
Oh, gotcha. Oh,
Roald Dahl is the author of Matilda. So yeah, and if you've read the book, it's a fun book. So, but yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what your background is, why people love what you do?
Or why they should give you money?
I started as a software developer in 2001. And started out with C#. And then I got into JavaScript and Node. And today I'm mostly working in Node and in Vue. So the last 2 years, I changed my workplace. So now I'm working with a company called Systor in Norway, and we are maintaining this. We're working for the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, keeping track of the vehicle toll passages. So taking pictures of the cars and keeping track of all the passages. And we also have this footprint calculator for the Norwegian farmers. But the first 19 years I spent coding for logistics solutions for transport planning and drivers app and track and trace and so on. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I have a number of friends that have done logistics. My last contract was logistics. It seems like that's an area that won't ever go anywhere. Plenty of work to do there.
Yeah.
But yeah. We brought you on today to talk about ORMs, or object relational mappers, and your RDB ORM. Do you want to give us just a little bit of background as to why you created RDB and what problems it solves for you?
I think it started in 2014. We were given the task to create a new product. It was a booking website for the customers of the transporters. So we were free to decide which database to choose and also which technology to use. So we quickly found out that Postgres was a good choice, but we were eager to try Node as well. And at that time, I think Node was quite young. I think it was on the 0.10 or something. So we thought we'd go for Node, and we checked out what kind of ORMs that existed, and we found Sequelize. And we considered using it, but it had so many bugs and was so inconsistent. So we knew we had to live with this product for many years, so we just considered making our own ORM, and I previously had some experience with an in-house ORM in C#, so it wasn't all that new. So that's how it started.
Very cool. So you built this product and you built an ORM to go on top of it so that you could map your database entities or database rows into objects in your applications. You could build it.
Yeah, that's correct. So in the beginning, there was, of course, only JavaScript. So so the last 2 years, I added a TypeScript layer on top of it, and
okay,
and using something called generic type mapping in TypeScript. That means that that TypeScript is running as you edit stuff in design time. So you can it creates new types as you write your code. There's no need for code generation.
Okay.
And there are some ORMs like Prisma and Drizzle ORM that does this today as well.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious because I remember way back early in my career, of course, I was writing Ruby on Rails, but one of my mentors mentioned to me that I ought to write an ORM as an exercise to understand some of the things that go into building applications like what I was building, right? So Ruby on Rails has an ORM. It's called Active Record. But, you see these in a lot of other systems. And it seems like on the face of it, it would be pretty simple, right? You do the query and you do the mapping. But as I kind of got into it, I figured out that there were a lot of other things that went into it, especially if you wanted because you want your ORM to save you work, right? To do things for you. Like you mentioned the generative, what was it? Generative type generation or
generic type
right?
mapping, yes.
Generic type mapping, right? So that may be a thing you want, or there may be other concerns or other ideas that you want to build into it. And so then it gets more complicated, right? Because you want some of those convenient methods or functions to be performed as you work so that it's not just grabbing the types and making them JavaScript or TypeScript, but now it's also, solving some of these other problems that I'm going to have as I build my app or accounting for other concerns. So I'm curious, as you built out an ORM, and then we can get into some of the whatever that term was. We should probably just put it in the comments, right? But
generic type mapping, yes.
generic type mapping. I'm gonna put that in the comments just so that I can remember it. But you get the idea. So as you're building out the ORM, what kinds of problems were you trying to solve besides just making it so that you had a JavaScript class instead of a kind of a map or a generic object?
We needed to have some kind of persistence without too much work, and in the beginning we made it with the persistence ignorance. That means that you, on the top of it, you make some kind of, not transaction, but some async local context around the whole thing, so that when you update anything on the record, you wouldn't need to explicitly call save or something. It would just when the transaction was over, it just committed anything, or if the database, you needed to fetch anything, if you had pending changes, it would just commit it. Yeah, that was in the original implementation, and it's still running in the core, but as I made this TypeScript thing on top of it, I found out that it would just be more beneficial to have explicit save and so on, because I also wanted to work in the browser as well. So that it was more convenient. And when you create your own ORM, you will dig into problems like performance, especially when you're dealing with one-to-many relations and even nested one-to-many relations. So that's a typical problem that you will stumble upon.
Hey, before we get going too far, could we step back and do a little basic definition of what we're doing here with an ORM and what it stands for? Obviously stands for Object Relational Mapper, but from a database standpoint, what is the purpose of this? What is it doing for you? And how does it work just from a basic level? I know I've had Valery Karpov on a couple of times to talk about Mongoose, which is the node ORM for Mongo, which is, a document database. So it's going to be a little different than a SQL style database. So what is it doing for the developer? Well, the ORM is just an object relational mapper. So it's a technique for converting the data from a relational database to the structures in the programming language. So, and it's funny you say Mongoose because it's not relational. So, right.
Yeah, but it still has its usages because you have to create queries and so on, and it's complex to do that. So. And usually, when you have a relational mapper, it's usually categorized into 2 or 3 patterns. It's the active record, which means that you define a model in code, and then you call me get one or get many, and you get the records. And these records also have behavior, like they have methods like save or delete or something. So they have some kind of logic. They're not anemic. And then there is the other category, which is the data map pattern or the repository pattern. This means that the rows are completely non-behavioral. They have no logic at all. It's only data. So in order to fetch stuff and to save stuff, you need to use the repository for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what you're going to do is from a SQL standpoint, you're going to define your tables, right? In your ORM, you're going to define, okay, here's my users table. Here's my, blog post table. Here's my image table, whatever it is you have, and your particular fields, right, to your mapper, so that when you want to make queries, it knows, okay, here's my fields available, and then access them from your ORM instead of going directly to the database, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And some of the ORMs, they can reverse engineer your database as well. So you can generate your model from the database. And you can also have great migrations. But I think that if you're trying to both define your models in code and when you try to reverse engineer the database, you will end up in trouble. Because it's like a hard git merge with complex. It's really hard, and I see that a lot of ORMs, they have a lot of issues regarding reverse engineering mixing with forward engineering. So yeah, that's troublesome.
So you said that RDB has been around for like 10 years, 9 years, something like that?
It's been since 2014, yes.
Right.
That's correct.
So, yeah, I mean, I see a lot of stuff in here, in the API, mapping tables, connecting, inserting, fetching, updating, deleting. You can run it in the browser, which is cool.
Yeah. That's a bit scary, maybe.
Maybe. Transactions, which makes sense if you're on Postgres, or MySQL also has it. SQLite, I think, has it as well. Anyway, data types, default values, that all makes sense. You've built validation in, which is cool. You can do raw SQL. So I think these are a lot of things that people who work on a relational database would expect, right? It makes sense to have them. So I kind of want to just move along a little bit and talk about the generic type mapping. So you mentioned that, you know, it's the way that you're basically getting your types into TypeScript, right?
Yes.
So how does that work? Like, what does it do? Because I mean, I've fiddled with TypeScript, but this isn't something that I've had to deal with, and it sounds like it's something that, as a casual user, it's not something that I would have to deal with, right? It's something that I would expect my framework or what have you to do for me, right?
It's really convenient if you would like to write your complete library in pure JavaScript, and you will also would like the consumer to have TypeScript. So what you do is you can actually start out with no implementation at all and just generate this or just create this definition file. It's usually called some index.d.ts. So you can start out just experimenting with the type mappings, and you can create new interfaces as you go on, and still have no implementation. So it's kind of magic. And also, I think it's quite difficult to understand some of the generics in it. So I had a hard time implementing it, but yeah, I think it was worth it.
So so let's say I generate a model or an entity, right? Something that maps something out of my database into my application, right? Is this automatically generating the type in the d.ts file?
Yes. Let's say you're creating, you map an order table with the order ID, and you say table is called order or underscore ordered, and you say column, and you give the column name like ID, and you give it order number or the date, and then straight away you can call methods on this newly generated order with get many and so on, and you can start using filters. Okay, I would like to have order date between from to, and it will all these things will be created for you without no code generation at all. But you still have to implement it behind the hood.
Okay. So so I don't have to write any code, and you're saying it's not generating any code. So how does TypeScript, because there's usually a language service behind TypeScript, right? So if I'm working in VS Code, like it picks up my types and it does the mapping, and it's smart enough to figure out, you know, a lot of these pieces for me. So is there some dynamic thing that you're handing off to TypeScript, or are you updating the definitions file, or how does that work?
No, there's no definition files.
Okay.
It's just everything is just dynamically. So
so it's just an API to my TypeScript runtime, and you say, hey, there's this type, or there are these types if I have several of them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So what happens at the build step then? Does it just pulls it does the same thing basically?
Well, at the build step there is no build step. You have to create your API with mapping methods, so the JavaScript library knows what to do.
Okay.
So this generic type mapping is just syntactical sugar. It's just that.
Right. Well, I know a lot of people that are building apps with TypeScript, and so they would expect, for example, if I'm making a call to get all the orders out of the system, and then I'm getting, you know, it gets all the line items for the orders, then they're expecting the get line items call to return a set of line item types that are defined in TypeScript. And so all of this is just dynamically handled.
Yes, typically you would use a fetching strategy. Let's say I have order with lines, and each line have products. So if you say, okay, orders get many, and with no fetching strategy, I just get the orders without lines, and I can pass in a fetching strategy, and everything that you passes in the fetching strategy is you have IntelliSense on it. So it will suggest, okay, I want to have orders, now I want to have lines, and you can also say that, okay, I only want the product name. I don't want all the other stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So then the generic type mapping does the part where it says, and I expect these to be line items, or expect these to be products, or expect these to be strings that are product names or whatever.
Yes. As if you would have some code generation, but there isn't any.
Right. That's slick.
Yeah.
So you said it was a lot of work. What did you have to do to make this work?
Well, there's a lot of generics involved, and it's kind of meta programming. I don't know what to call it. And also, you cannot do any counting in the generic. Right. So let's say I have a composite ID with two columns in it. And then I want to have I want this table with this composite ID. I want to join it to another table. And then I wanted the TypeScript to suggest the correct types based on the from table and the primary keys of the target table. So they would match, suggest based on the primary keys. But the problem is that I would only suggest that you have two inputs, the first key and the first column and the second column. And this is really hard because you can't do any counting. You have to tell the generic stuff that 1 + 1 is 2. There is no way of just saying that, okay, I have two generic keys.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I stopped at six columns in the composite case. I think that's sufficient. So that's simple things are hard and other things are easy. So it's
right. So I guess the other question I have is, why make all the effort to make TypeScript do all this stuff? I mean, the ORM itself will run in JavaScript, won't it?
Yeah, it will. So the only reason is to have a better developer experience. And I think that if you want your ORM to be public and people want to use it, you just have to have TypeScript today. Otherwise, you wouldn't survive, I think.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of adoption toward TypeScript, so that makes sense.
But using TypeScript for the library itself, it was not really an option. It would be very difficult, and all the types would be in the way, I think. But being a consumer of an ORM is nice, but writing the ORM with TypeScript, that's a nightmare. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what's the difference then? Is it because it was historically written in JavaScript, and so doing the rewrite would be hard, or are there specific things about TypeScript that make it hard?
Let's see. I think it's both. More, of course, it's historical written in TypeScript, in JavaScript, and it would be hard to just move over to TypeScript. But still, there are things that you do on a prototype level and low-level JavaScript that's not easily done with TypeScript, I think.
Okay. Steve, do you have some questions you want to ask? I feel like I've kind of been monopolizing for the last 20 minutes.
No, not really. Haven't dived into the TypeScript world yet. I think I've discussed here, most of my experience with an ORM is coming from Laravel. Eloquent, since that's the ORM for Eloquent is the ORM for Laravel. So I'm fairly, familiar with how they work and what they do, but not in the TypeScript world. So I'm living mostly in PHP as compared to Node. So that was just my reason for asking for the, basic definition of what an ORM is. But no, I can't think of any other questions off the top of my head or offhand
All right.
either.
Well, I'll keep going then. So Lars, I'm wondering if you're using RDB on any apps that you're building currently.
Yes, it's still being used at my previous coworker in the previous workplace, and I think they're using it in about 100 installations. So it's not widely used, but it's used in critical systems, and it's also used at my current employer. I think it's we made an IPA for receiving the status of each toll. At the toll station,
IPA?
there is we created a REST IPA for every 5th minute.
Oh, okay.
There is sent statuses from the cameras, radars, and lasers from the whole Norway to this API, and this is using the RDB.
Very cool. And is all that written in TypeScript now, or?
Yeah, that's TypeScript in the. Yeah.
So, you mentioned earlier that performance is always an issue. So, how well does this perform? How many API calls can it get, and over what time period, and how much compute are you putting behind it?
That depends on your machine, of course, but I haven't done any benchmarks on it. But it's pretty performant. That's all I can say. It's we have this hub at my previous employer that receives all the truck data from the drivers, from about 150 companies at the same time. So it's it's performing well. Yeah. And
cool.
And for a SQL Server, I did a special query for it because it has this built-in 4 JSON queries. So you can create one large query with subqueries beneath it, and it performs extremely well. I don't know if you have tried it. It has it's called for JSON Auto in SQL Server. So if you name your columns and correctly, you could get a hierarchical structure back from the database, so you don't need to do many queries and round trips. But that is special made for SQL Server. So what I do for the other ones is that, let's say you have a fetching strategy with order and order lines, that will use 2 queries to first get the order and then the lines. And if you have regular joins like order with customer, then this will perform in the first query. So only one to many queries will give an extra database round trip. And I also try to make a pretty slick filtering mechanism. It's a bit like the link expressions in C#, where you can say order.lines, and you have a callback, and you say line.product equals something. So it's kind of like C# link expressions. So that's really nice and convenient, I think.
Cool. Yeah, what you're talking about with, making the second round trip for the related objects, Rails does that as well. You can tell it to include those in it. Instead of we've been talking about this for, since Rails came out in 2006, is n+1 queries, where you make the first query for the object, and then you make n queries to fetch the rest of them, right? So you have 20 line items, and so you make 20 queries to get them all, and so you reduce that to making one query that gives you 20 rows or 20 entities that you can translate over. And it sounds like you're solving the same problem in a lot of the same ways.
I know that some of the ORMs have lazy loading as well. So if you initially only got the lines without the orders without the lines, you can say that I want the lines as well, and you will get it. But then you need to call some method or await the promise or something.
Yeah. Effectively, the way that Rails does it is you tell it when you fetch the parent entity that you also want to include the child entities, and so it basically eager loads it, right, instead of lazy loads it. And then since it already has it in memory, then when you say, okay, now I want to say iterate over them, right, it already has them in memory, so it pulls them from memory instead of from the database, and that's faster. So is there anything new coming for RDB?
Well, I just added the conflict handling, so you can both on insert and updates.
Okay.
So on insert, it would typically be like an upsert or something, and you can apply a strategy saying that, okay, for this column, if there's a conflict, I want to just skip it, and if on this column, I want you to override the existing one. And so there are 3 strategies. It's the default, the optimistic, just update it unless it's already there, and the overwrite and the ignore or skip on conflict, I call it. And you can also have this on, it's also checking the old values. So let's say you are in the browser and you're fetching the rows from backend, and someone changed the row in the meantime. Then you can have a strategy saying that, okay, if this column was changed in the meantime, then you can just overwrite it, or you can skip it, or you can have a conflict, which is the default. So I created this conflict handling for all databases, for SQLite, SQL Server, MySQL, and PostgreSQL. That's the latest addition, and I'm planning on implementing for Oracle as well.
Cool.
Yeah. And on the client side, you can actually fetch it from browser and still get intelligence on it, and you would normally would be a bit concerned about the security, because if you construct SQL queries from the client, you could have SQL injection and and stuff like that. So what I do is when I create a filter on the client side, I use a proxy, JavaScript proxy, and I record all the method calls, and I pass it to the server, and the server just replays all the filters and checks if you're allowed to do it. And you can use normal. It's hosted in Express. It's just an Express endpoint, so you can add JSON web token handling, and you can also add a base filter just to limit what orders you fetch. So this can be set up from the server with this base filter.
Cool. Very cool. Well, if people want to check this out, or if there's, if this is interesting to them, what are the best places to go look at it? I think I'll post the GitHub link and the website link, but are there other places that you want, or that you want people to go to kind of get updates and stuff?
No, I think GitHub is just fine. I have only the web page and the GitHub page. I just want to keep it simple. So
right.
And there are nice examples in the documentation. So it's it's really easy to get started.
Cool.
There's one thing that's missing, and I'm considering adding it, and that's migrations.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's something I would need to have, but I'm a bit worried about the reverse engineering part because when I see all the issues in the other ORMs, a lot of them are related to migrations, and typically when you mix forward and reverse engineering, it will end up in conflicts. And so I think I'll start out with just forward. So you just define your models and just just call generate or something, and that will generate SQL migration, and then you can just deploy it and then change the data model again and call generate, and then you will have a new migration.
Cool. Yeah, Rails Active Record has migrations, and I use them pretty heavily. So in fact, that's how you manage all of your database structure, right? There's not really a better way to manage your database structure than that for those apps. How do you do it currently? Do you have to have your database specialist or your developers go in and directly run the queries to update the database, or do you have another mechanism for that right now?
We just, at my current workplace, we use Liquibase actually, but this is mainly because there is it's working for Java and other languages as well. So that's our tool.
Okay.
I don't know if you have heard about it, Liquibase.
Nope, but I'll post a link because I just looked it up. But
historically, we just use plain scripts. I just name them .001 SQL and just make a small batch, just to make a small script to run them sequentially. So, and then I have a table in the database that says the current version of the migration now. Yeah, so pretty simple.
Yeah, that's more or less how Rails works. It's actually written in code instead of SQL, and the number on it is time-stamped instead of version number. But it used to be version number. It used to be 001 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, whatever, right? So yeah.
But sometimes migration can involve data migration as well. So you need to do something manually. So
I generally try to do those in a separate task.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing structural migrations, a lot of times you can't rely on the structure of the database to match up with your data migration, and you'll get errors saying, hey, this field doesn't exist, or things like that, depending on how it runs. Because Rails isn't sequential. It keeps track of each migration and whether or not it's been run on your database.
Okay.
And so
I think some ORMs you can generate migration, and then you can add custom SQL before it and after it.
Yeah, you can add custom SQL in there, but it's kind of ugly to do.
Yeah.
So, and by ugly, it's not as clean as the change this column, change this table kind of thing that you get out of the nice Rails DSL or domain specific language that they have for your migrations. So but it makes sense to have them. I like that. All right.
And
well,
you can also when you generate filters, you can also mix them with custom filters, like with raw SQL filters.
Right.
And you have this logical operator. You can have and, or, and you can just mix as you like. But sometimes it's easier to write a filter directly in raw SQL than using the ORM.
Yeah, that's true of pretty much every other system I've worked on as well, is just that, having that possibility, because there's not a clean way to get it using the ORM's language around looking stuff up.
So when you talk about a filter, you're talking like a where condition on a statement? Okay, so one of the things that Eloquent does in Laravel that I think is really cool is they have something called scopes.
Mm-hmm.
And a scope is where you define a separate function, that says, you feed in your query builder, and then you say, here's my condition for whatever this where
Rails
this field,
does this too.
Right? And then when you're actually building your query, you just chain it on. So everything's chained. You're using the Fluent approach where you chain things on. So if you're writing your query, where this and this, then you just chain on your predefined scope, and that function does a filter. So you could dynamically add it, or you could, hard code it depending on how you're writing your code. But it sounds like that's what you're dealing with here is the ability to have a custom defined scope that you can just, add as needed.
Yeah.
Yep. It looks like, it looks like filter can go in, and contain a where value. Anyway, definitely interesting. And I don't think there's really maybe there is, and I just don't know about it, but typically we're using where conditions and not filters in our Rails stuff. So that might be an interesting way to solve at least one particular problem that I'm running into right now on my client project. So anyway, but scopes don't use the filter keyword in SQL. They actually just encapsulate a where or
a where. Correct.
Yeah. Anyway, cool stuff. All right. Well, I'm going to push us into our picks. Lars, I'm going to assume that you've listened to the show, but I'm going to explain for people who are new. And we've had some people pop on and off on Facebook to watch our live feed, which is fun. You can go find us on the JavaScript Jabber page on Facebook. We're also streaming it to LinkedIn and to YouTube. We're working on getting it streamed to Twitter, which I think is where we have a lot more people following us. So just keep an eye out, because we'll be around. And then if you want to watch us live, all the better. And then, if you want the cleaned up version, then in a few weeks, we'll have it out on the podcast feed. But so picks are just shout outs about stuff we like. I'll let Steve go first, since he's good at it.
Well. So we'll get to the dad jokes of the week, which are the highlight of any episode, if you ask me, but that's only if you ask me. Now, for those who are fans of the dad jokes, I must tell you that I have lost my drum rim shot sound effect, at least for now. I'm hoping to get it back with the changeover.
Yeah, we switched systems, but there is they showed me how to do sound effects, but we're gonna have to upload them, and I haven't figured out how to do that. So
I will have some fun with that.
Back.
So when I tell the jokes, just imagine the normal rim shot in your head, or maybe Chuck can give me one. So thank you. Yes. So man walks into a bar, holding a golf club, and the bartender looks at him and with this look and says, "Why the golf club?" And he said, "It's my designated driver." Right? Thank you. I was talking to my wife. I was talking to my wife the other day, and she, I told her that I absolutely love, I think you say this Worcestershire sauce. And she asked what's so special about it, and I said it's hard to say. Right, and then we were out at a wedding here recently, and she said to me, that's the fourth time you've gone back for dessert. Doesn't that embarrass you? I said, no, I just tell them it's for you. So those are the dad jokes of the week.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to do more traditional picks. I always shout out about stuff. It is that time of year again. A friend of mine owns a board game shop. I do this every year, I swear. I'm telling you, this is why I'm learning these games. So I'm going to do some picks of some board games. I try and pick a new board game every week. I'm not trying a new board game every week often. So, sometimes I'm doing repeats. But for the next 5 or 6 weeks, I'm volunteering at TimpCon, which is a local board game conference here in Utah. It's in Provo. And anyway, you can bring your own games, and then, just they have little signs you can put up and say, hey, new players, welcome, right? And so I like doing that, just walking over, hey, this looks interesting. Can I play, right? And so then we'll play a round of whatever game somebody brought, or they have a library where you can go check games out. And somebody like brings in his whole game collection, the guy that runs it. And so you can borrow a game from him, basically. But volunteering there, specifically, I'm volunteering with Gamers Inn, which is a local game store. And that's the game store that my friend's part owner in. And what they do is they demonstrate 6 games that are fairly popular right now. And so people can sit down and play them. And usually he tries to pick games that you can play in less than a half hour to an hour. So this one was one of my favorites of the ones that we tried out. It's called Acropolis. That's Acropolis, Akropolis. And it runs about 30 minutes. The way that it works is really simple. In fact, Board Game Geek puts a weight on it of 1.79. So I tell people that a 2 on Board Game Geek is kind of a casual gamer that, people who aren't deep into board games and mechanics and strategies can play without, and still have a shot at winning it and will enjoy it, right? They're not trying to overthink all the things. And so what you do is you have different color tiles. So they're hexes, and you get a piece that has 3 hexes on it, right? And so you typically start with one piece that has a blue hex on it that is a star hex. And so the number of stars you have in a color is the multiplier for the other tiles that you have that are properly placed on the board that are that color, right? So then if you put a blue tile out and you have 1 star in blue, then they're all worth 1. And if you have 4 stars in blue, then all the blue tiles that are properly placed are, 4 points instead of 1, right? So the way that we played it, and I can't remember if there are different scorecards, but the scorecard we played with, it was in your biggest group of blues, each one counted for a point, right? And then your stars made them multiply up. Yellows were yellows that weren't next to other yellows. Reds were on the edge. Purples were completely surrounded. And I think there was another color, greens. You just got a point for every green one you had, right? And then what you do is you have the number of people who are playing +1 tiles out there, and the first person takes 1, then the next person takes 1, the next person takes 1, and whoever goes first, they put the token that lets somebody else go first onto the first tile after they take 1, right? So they give that up every time, but if nobody picks it up, then they get it back, is the way that it works. But typically somebody's going to pick up that tile because they want to go first, and there isn't anything else out there that really appeals to them. But you can build your city horizontally, right? So you can fit it in around the other pieces, or you can stack them. And so if you put it on top of 3 other hexes, right, that are already in your city, then those spots count for 2, or if it's 3 levels up, 3, right? But you have to be able to cover up 3 other spots, that are connected in the lower level, right? So you can't have an empty space underneath any of them. But yeah, so you just build it up, and then you score your city based on those stars and the number of tiles you have that fit the description, and whoever has the most points wins. So it's, it's a relatively simple game, but there are a lot of ways to win, and it really isn't heavily skewed toward any one of them. So it kind of depends on what you're able to pick up and things like that. So you do pay attention to everybody else, just in the sense of, if he picks that up, that's worth 8 points to him. If I pick it up, it's worth 4 points to me, and the other tile is worth 5 points to me. So he wouldn't get as far as head if I steal it, but mostly you're just trying to build your own city, right? So that's as complicated as it gets. Like I said, runs about a half hour. We've played it with 3 and 4 players, and that seems to go pretty well. It says age 8+. It is like, I mean, I described it. It's that simple. So yeah, you can definitely play it with 8-year-olds. I'm going to put an Amazon affiliate link in here as well. So if you buy it, I get a percentage. It doesn't make it cost any more for you, but I feel like, you have to disclose that. But yeah, if you want to go buy it on Amazon, definitely go pick it up. Right now it's listed at $28, and you can get it overnight right now if you have Amazon Prime. So anyway, super fun game. Really, really enjoyed it. And so Acropolis is that pick. The other thing I'm going to pick is, so folks, I don't know if I've talked a ton about this, but my goal next year is to complete a half Ironman. And so if you're wondering what that is, it's a triathlon. It's about a 1.25 mile swim, 57 mile bike ride, and then a half marathon, or 13.1 miles at the end of the, to finish it out. And so obviously I have to get in shape. And getting in shape isn't as simple as just being fit enough to do that stuff, but you have to have, the right muscle set groups exercise together for the bike, for the swim, and for the run. Right. So right now I'm getting back into swimming shape. I've been mostly focused on running. That helps your cardiovascular system and stuff like that be able to support the rest of it. But then I get into the pool, and I get out and I'm sore and tired because I haven't worked some of those muscle groups in a while, because I quit exercising for like 4 months. So I'm trying to get back on the wagon, and I'm trying to get trained up. One of the things I bought, and this is for the swimming. So if you're not aware, if you've never tried it, I have a couple of sets of waterproof headphones that are Bluetooth, but Bluetooth won't work more than like an inch underwater. And so as I'm swimming down the pool, I mean, the second I go under the water, it cuts out, right? So I either have to store the music or whatever on my headphones, or I have to have something that'll transmit it. And I like to play whatever on my phone without having to worry about loading up my headset. So I bought this headphone set called Zygo. And what it does is it has a base unit that pairs with your phone, right? So it does the Bluetooth, and I just set mine right next to my phone. And then it has a headset that connects to the base unit, and that headset actually connects to the base unit through an FM transmitter, right? So it's a low-powered FM transmitter, and FM radio waves will penetrate water, right? So I can swim up and down, and it mostly sounds pretty good. And then it's bone conduction headphones, and I swim with earplugs anyway, so that works great. So anyway, long-winded pick. I'm picking Zygo. I really, really like them. Makes my swim a little bit more enjoyable, because I can listen to music or a podcast or something while I'm swimming. And so I'm going to pick that. And then there was something else I was going to pick, and I'm blanking on it. So,
well, while you're thinking about that, Chuck, as a former competitive swimmer and water polo player, I thought it'd be worth pointing out that when you swim, you're supposed to stay on top of the water, not necessarily below the water. Just saying.
Yeah, fair enough. But my head is far enough into the water to where the Bluetooth just doesn't work. So
gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Clarify that.
I mean, if you swim with your head down, it puts the headphones, an inch or two in, and that's enough for it to disrupt the Bluetooth. So anyway, so I'm pretty happy with those headphones. And the other thing I'm going to pick, I guess, getting back into this, is TriDot. So TriDot, TRIDOT. It gives me all of my workouts for my triathlon. And so anyway, as you do assessments periodically, and then it adjusts the intent, it tells you what intensity to do the workouts at. And I really like it. It works out really, really nicely. So
do you have a particular triathlon that you're shooting for, or just you want to do one at some point down the road?
So the one I want to do, I don't know if I'm going to be fit enough to do it, is in May, and it is the St. George half.
Oh, way down there, huh? That'll be nice and toasty.
Yeah, and like I said, it's in May, so it'll be warm. But it's it's close enough to where I can put on my gear in my truck and drive down, right? So I just stay there the night before and then go. And yeah, I really, I'm really digging it. So anyway, the other thing that's nice about TriDot is that it connects to Garmin, so my watch and things like that. So it'll import, when I go do the workout, it'll import all the data and do all the other stuff. So anyway, really like TriDot. All right, Lars, what are your picks?
I have a couple. I have tried out this platform for building HTML hybrid apps. So what it does for you is that you can develop locally, and it's integrated with GitHub, and it will support different Cordova plugins, and it can actually build the native app for both App Store and Google Play, and it can deploy directly to App Store and Google Play. So you don't really need a Mac to deploy. So normally, if you want to deploy to App Store, you have to have a Mac. So this is a great tool for Teams as well, I think. And I have a great debugger app, so you can just download the debugger app and just push your code, and it will download the code into the debugger app, and you can run it and check how it works natively.
Oh, nice.
And it's called Monaka. I think it's a Japanese company or something. Monaka.io. They also have a UI library, but don't use it. That's not the good part. But I think I've tried out something called Framework 7. It's made by someone called Vladimir Karlampidi. It's free and it's open source, and it has a native look and feel. So it's framework7.io.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think I have a couple of jokes.
Oh, go for it.
Yes.
Yeah, this one is a functional programming joke. Two funks went into a bar. Nothing happened. And the second one, why do Java programmers have to wear glasses? Because they don't see sharp.
Oh, that's a little language specific one there.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. Well, Lars, if people want to find you, say on social media, follow you on Twitter or GitHub or whatever, where are you?
I'm usually on Twitter, so it's LROAL.
All right. We'll put that in the comments here and into the show notes. Thanks for coming. This was really fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Till next time, folks. Max out.
Adios.
Goodbye.